I'm Bill Whittle, sitting in for Hot Mike, who just a moment ago came through the door, but the door was closed. He's in the hospital with a concussion. We hope to have him back perhaps tomorrow. Today I'd like to talk about identity politics. Identity politics is, well, it's a plague is what it is. It's like locusts or rivers of blood. It's destroying America, and it's designed to destroy America. We have great guests today talking about identity politics, but let's just tee it up a little bit, shall we? America is what Ronald Reagan says. It really is a shining city on the hill, because America is an example of how people can live and what happens when you basically leave them alone. You get the most successful, the most prosperous, formerly the most happy, the richest people in the world. And that sets a pretty bad example if you're a socialist tyrant or some other kind of despot. It's a very bad example. As a matter of fact, the presence of America pretty much invalidates everything that the socialists have been selling, and before them, kings and emperors and priests and all the rest. So if you're one of these left-wingers and you are trying to get the world under your boot, you've got a problem. And the problem is America. It's so attractive. Everybody knows what's going on over here. People from all around the world want to come here because America is that shining city on the hill. It's a beacon. So what do you do about that if you're a left-wing control freak weenie? Well, obviously the first thing you have to do, in fact the only thing you have to do, is you have to destroy America. Now, that's harder than it looks, and the reason it's harder than it looks is because of America's incredible strength, which, if you'll give me a second, I'll tell you all about. Strangely enough, the strength of this country is its unity, and I say strangely enough because there is no more diversified population on planet Earth than there is in this country. There's people from, I think there's 200 different languages. Every country in the world is represented here as Americans. And prior to the arrival of the progressives, let's say 20, 30 years ago, we had a theory of immigration and assimilation called the melting pot. And the melting pot was very simple. The melting pot said that if you come here from Norway or Madagascar, you come here from Venezuela, you come here from Zaire, it doesn't matter. You are going to go into this society and you're going to melt into it. You're going to bring a little bit of what you bring with you, obviously. You're going to bring some of the culture and some of the traditions and so on. But you're going to melt into the larger culture and change it in very subtle, slight little ways by your presence, which is good. We wouldn't have St. Patrick's Day beer festivals if the Irish had not come over, that kind of thing. And that is an astonishingly powerful thing, because when people come to this country and they enter legally and they take the citizenship test and then the oath of citizenship, when people raise their right hands and become citizens of the United States, they're as American as somebody whose family came over on the Mayflower. They are as American as they are. It's an incredible idea. And so people come to America and they're born again in a real sort of way. They're remade, they're new people in a new country, and they're ready to get to work. And that is basically unbeatable. There's just nothing that you can run against that. So if you're going to destroy America, what you have to do is you have to destroy this idea of the melting pot. You have to destroy e pluribus unum, out of many one. And what you basically have to do is turn it on its head and say out of one, many. That's how we get identity politics. That's how we get into the trouble we're in. Now, I've talked before about the Frankfurt School. I'm not going to go into all of that again, but suffice it to say that a group of communists after World War I started something called the Institute for Marxism, which was in Frankfurt. And the philosophers of the day referred to it as the Frankfurt School, and that's what we call it today. These people were given asylum in the United States before Hitler came to power. And the first thing they did when they got here, at Columbia University, by the way, was to figure out a pretty detailed plan on how to destroy this country. They knew that their communist revolution and socialist paradise wasn't going to happen from where they thought it was going to happen, which was the proletariat. According to theory, the workers were going to rise up and take over the means of production. That wasn't going to happen in America, because America, its capitalist system, was making so much wealth for everybody that workers lived like kings compared to the rest of the world in America. So they knew it wasn't going to come from workers, it wasn't going to come from the economy, and they decided that, well, in order to get this country down, what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to divide the country up into tribes, and they're going to appeal to the dispossessed. And what they're really doing when they do identity politics, because they understand us very well, they're using our own decency and our own compassion, and that's the cell that the virus of progressivism uses to get into the American system. So What that means is, according to the Frankfurt School guys, we have an offense and we have a defense. Their offense is critical theory. Critical theory is their sword. Critical theory is the idea that we divide America up into little groups and every group attacks the middle. They never attack each other. That's very important. So you have blacks being told that this is the most racist country in history and the only place where slavery ever existed. Women are told that Americans are just a bunch of, nasty, chauvinistic pigs who want to keep women barefoot and pregnant. Gay people are told it's the only country in the world where, people are tied up and beaten up and so on. All of this is just outright lies. But what it does is it fractures that e pluribus unum, fractures it into identities, sets the country at war against the middle, and eventually at war against themselves. It's really a war against the whole idea of America, though. That's really what it is. So that's why we have left-wing identity politics. That's why we have a black America, and a gay America, and a Latino America, and a trans America, and we've got a differently abled America. We have a privileged America. We have all of these Americas now because the left has been very successful at fracturing the country with their critical theory. Their defense, by the way, their shield, if that's their sword, their shield is political correctness. In other words, we don't have to argue with you. You're a misogynist, you're a racist, you're a homophobe, you're an Islamophobe. We don't talk to people like you. And decent people don't want to be called these things, so they shut up. It's been working like a charm. However, there is a little bit of pushback. And one of the identity groups that the left and the Democrats count on so heavily is women, which seems like it might be a strange minority group considering it's slightly more than the population. There's a few more women than men because women live longer and also because women are not quite so prone to say, hold my beer and watch this. So having control of the women's vote is essential to the Democrats. And fortunately for us, we have some people on our team who are just terrific fighters. And so I want to bring in two of my favorite people ever that I've ever met. I've traveled around the country doing speaking engagements everywhere. And when I went to Indianapolis, these two people who is Miriam Weaver, who you might know as Macarena, and Amy Jo Clark, who might be known as Daisy. They have a website called Chicks on the Right. They are kicking butt. As a matter of fact, they got a sign in the back of their, right over their head. What does that say, ladies? Right over your head there, Miriam?
Make today amazeballs.
Okay, well then let's make today amazeballs.
Yeah.
So, ladies, you've been doing just stellar work, fantastic work, and on your website it says, and basically on the description for your book, Right for a Reason, you're basically saying, you know what, we are going to aggressively get into this idea that conservatives are these, white males with bow ties and suspenders and wire-rimmed glasses, and we're going to go in there and bring some style and some energy and some punch and some real feminine enthusiasm to this. So let me start off by asking if Lena Dunham speaks for you, because she says that she does.
Oh my gosh, no, she does not speak for us. In fact, I feel like my lunch is coming up every time I see Lena Dunham. Why is that? Why do I feel that way?
Oh God! And now you're putting a picture over on the screen.
We just ate lunch, Bill. What are you doing? What are you doing? Oh my goodness!
No, she does not speak for us, and we actually do a lot of writing about her on our website. And we get complaints. It's odd because we'll get complaints from people saying, "Why do you devote so much attention to someone? If you would just ignore her, she would disappear." And the problem is that she won't. And she has so many followers on all of her social media platforms, and we always tell our followers the only way to combat the ignorant people who follow her is to call them out and to show them a different side and to disagree.
And we do this a lot with pop culture too. That's one of the things that we started doing many years ago when we started our site, is we started calling out people in pop culture. It's something that the right doesn't do very well, I think, is getting ingrained in pop culture and sort of implementing ourselves and kind of getting our hands into pop culture more, something that we've not done. It's why SNL is indoctrinating people on politics, right?
There has to be an alternative view, and we like to believe we're contributing to providing that. Yeah.
Well, you certainly are, and you're providing it with enthusiasm and humor and passion, and these are the things that convince people that you're actually telling the truth. But the thing that I find so repulsive about the left's identity politics is the idea that the left speaks for everyone in that group. And they will say verbatim, now I'm not exaggerating, they will, somebody or another will come out and say, you cannot be a woman and a Republican at the same time. If you're a black person and you vote Republican, you're an Uncle Tom, you're helping the slave owners. They speak for everybody because they assume that everybody in their identity group thinks exactly the way that they do. It's unbearably arrogant and just plain wrong.
Yeah, we get people that write us all the time. Like, we get transgenders who will write us and say, I'm a conservative. Hello, I'm a conservative, and I'm a transgender, I'm gay, I'm black, I'm a woman, I'm this, I'm that, and I'm a conservative. And people say that's not true. Those people don't exist, you know. But
Amy, let me just jump in on that for a second. Because one experience I've had out here in Los Angeles, and you ladies have probably had it too, I have had at least 4 or 5 gay conservatives come to me and say, it is much, 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 much easier for me to admit that I'm gay to a conservative than I am to admit to liberals that I'm sorry. It's much easier for me to admit I'm gay to conservatives than it is for me to admit I'm a conservative to my gay and liberal friends. They say it's no contest. The conservatives are it's just not much of an issue. We see people as individuals, but you will be banned from this tribe if you decide to go against the identity that's been assigned to you by the progressive left.
Oh, yeah, they will banish you. Because, you know, really, if you talk to most conservatives, we'll say, I don't care what you do in your bedroom. I really don't care. I don't want to know, frankly.
Yeah. And it's the militant activists that, no matter what minority group you're talking about, whether it's BLM, whether it's LGBT, it's the very loud vocal minority within those minorities that cause the most trouble. Mm-hmm. And that unfortunately have enough impact on, like you said, making you feel like they speak for a wider audience when in fact they don't. But unfortunately, they're the ones that are driving actual policy change. And that's why we feel like it's so important to fight against it and to be voices on the other side.
And it's the reason that we're seeing so much, even like in the past week, we've seen, people say, all conservatives are Nazis. And it's, like Trump is a Nazi, all conservatives, all white people are Nazis. And we're seeing ridiculous things being said, just in light of what happened in Charlottesville. It's insane, the narrative that people are pushing.
I get the sense, just because I try to make a living, kind of keeping my ear to the rails, like in Daniel Boone, you put your ear up against the railroad's tracks, and you can say, there's a train 40 miles away, it'll be here in 2 hours. But I try to do that as much as I can, and I certainly get the sense that the American people, as a general rule, have had about enough of this. But let me ask each of you personally, we'll start with you, Miriam, and then we'll go to you, Amy. What presumptions about being a woman has the left made that you personally find most offensive and annoying?
Well, what I see on our social media a lot, or what the emails that we get, are people saying, how can you vote against your own self-interests? Which I find just absolutely absurd, because it's just a talking point, and people don't realize that if they would just simply look at a Republican platform or a conservative platform or ideas, these are ideas that are good and that work for everyone. And so that's what I see coming through when we get liberals and progressives that are contacting us. They're always making this accusation that we're voting against our best interests. They buy into this nonsense about the gender wage gap, which has been debunked 11 million different ways until Sunday. And so they buy into these talking points, and then they just absorb it, and that's what they know. That's what they hear. And then we get accused of being anti-woman, which is absurd. We like women.
Yeah, so, we like women. We are women. We have a women-owned business, and we hire women.
That's right.
So we really do love women. For me, I think it's that my decisions have all been, I guess, coerced in some way by my husband. We get that a lot. I get that a lot. And that I can't make any educated decisions on my own. I find that very interesting. I think if people would look further, like I just said, they would see that we do have a business. We started a business on our own because we are American women. We are so grateful every day that we live in this country because we are given the opportunity to have a business. And we started our business when we had other full-time jobs, and we were moms, and we were wives. And we did lots of other things, and we were able to have a side business that grew into now what is our full-time job. And now we're on the radio, we're able to express our opinions. This is the only country in the world that I can think of where we are able to do this. And I can't express to you how grateful we are for that.
Yeah.
The choices that we have every day as American women. I just wish people like Lena Dunham would look around and see you can't do this anyplace else.
And Bill, there was something that you said at the beginning of this segment about, you know, people that become citizens. My parents are Polish immigrants, and they came to this country in '67, and they did it the legal way. And, you know, they hardly spoke any English, and they went to school, and they made great lives for themselves here as Americans. And they have an understanding and an appreciation for what it means to be an American, what American exceptionalism means, more so than so many people that are Americans that were born here or that are leftists who actually hate this country and what it stands for and refuse to melt into that pot.
Yeah, I think and what she and her sister always say about melting. That's what you said about melting, and that I think she and I were both shaking our heads about that, because they always talk about that whole notion of melting.
Just melt.
Melt.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think next time you hear from one of these zombies that, you know, you're voting against your interest, I would ask them if they have any idea what kind of courage and energy it takes to swim upstream against this kind of nonsense. You want to talk about woman power. What you guys are doing requires not only energy, but actual moral courage. We're going to be back right after the break. We're going to talk about what feminism has evolved into, or I suppose I should say mutated into, in about a minute or two. We'll be right back. This is the Hot Mic Show with Bill Whittle right here on NRA TV.
It's hard to believe, but this year marks the 6th season of The Noir Show. I've had a hell of a good time trying to put together the best take on gun culture I possibly can. And one of the best parts has been interacting with you, the fans. One thing you've said from the very beginning is we want more noir. Well, me too. So this year I'm doing things a little different. We're not gonna wait until the fall to give you finished, polished, shiny new episodes. Nope. This year, we're gonna release content while we're still in production. So some of these videos are gonna make it into the final episodes this fall, others are only gonna be standalone. Either way, my goal is to give you exactly what you want. More noir. So look forward to all sorts of new content from The Noir Show for the rest of the year. And I hope you enjoy.
It's as patriotic as it gets. A gathering in the heartland of folks from all 50 states. Welders, salesmen, farmers, accountants, soldiers, first responders. Here, we're all the same. Here, we are all race fans. We are proud of our country, proud of our military, proud of our drivers. We proudly stand for our national anthem. And we have a great reverence for names like Yarborough, Earnhardt, Waltrip, and Gordon. Yes, there are other NASCAR races, but this one is special. 500 temper flaring, finger waving, ego busting 15-second laps. And deep into the warm August night, hardly a seat in the last great Coliseum will be used. You see, this isn't just a race. This is America's night race. The Bass Pro Shops NRA night race.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Hot Mic Show. I'm Bill Whittle, and we've got our guests today are the chicks on the right, Mock and Daisy, Miriam and Amy, and we've been talking about identity politics and the way the left will put people into tribes so that they can divide the country and basically split its foundations. Ladies, it seems to me that feminism has mutated into something pretty ugly, and a lot of left-wing institutions have. There was a time when I think any rational decent person was a feminist. You know, the idea that women could have their own jobs, their own property, the vote, equal pay for equal work, all of this. I don't know a single conservative who disagrees with any of this stuff. But it seems to me now that as the real injustices of the world are slowly eliminated, they have to find synthetic injustices and mine a little deeper, to the point where it seems to me now, and I'd just like to get your take on this, it seems to me that modern feminism as it exists is pretty much a complete inversion of femininity as it's understood.
Yeah. I mean, you got to cut your hair and talk about how you want to free the nipple, and I want you to pay for my tampons, and it's ridiculous. It's a joke.
We want to be as far away from that label as possible, and that's unfortunate, because you're right. It started out with a great bang, and the first wave feminists did amazing things for women as a whole. But now it's an embarrassment. It's become an embarrassment, and we want nothing to do with the label. And the Women's March is a perfect example. In fact, we just wrote a column for the Indianapolis Star recently about the founders of the Women's March, who are just, they're commie whack jobs.
Yeah, they're vile.
And it doesn't even matter to the women who follow them that the founders look up to people like Louis Farrakhan. And I'm thinking, how does this even, how do they not see the disconnect? It's amazing.
I mean, when you have Linda Sarsour, who is one of the organizers of this, and people are making excuses for this woman. I mean, it's unreal for people to want to be connected with her in any way. It's vile.
Well, let me ask you, if we just say that you guys are champions of kind of the conservative view of melting pot America, and you are, how do you see the difference? The left sees women in a certain way, and you see women in a certain way. Can you set up what the difference is in terms of how you see what used to be known as the fairer sex and now is probably known as the...
That's sexist, Bill.
The judge sex.
I think that the number one thing, at least for me, we probably agree on this, is I don't see myself as a victim.
Yeah.
And I don't raise my girls to be victims. I mean, I have every opportunity that my husband does. And I can do anything that he can. With the exception of, I don't know, a few things that I probably can't say, you know, on your show. But I can do anything that he can. And when it comes to owning businesses and doing anything professional, anything in the world that I want to do, I have every opportunity that he has. And and you know what? I don't limit myself, and I don't feel like a victim, and I don't go through life feeling like a victim. And I think that is the biggest difference between, you know, us and liberal women, is they try to find ways and reasons to be victims and victimized and, oh, woe is me, and who can I sue? And they're constantly looking for reasons to be offended. And it's such a mystery to me. You probably saw the viral video of Ashley Judd complaining about being called sweetheart and having her dress complimented. Ridiculous.
In an airport recently. Yeah. And we were just, why would you interpret someone's kindness as some display of rampant sexism? But this is the mentality of these women. And then try to have that person fired? What is insane? What is wrong with you? Insane.
Yeah, it's well, there's some really interesting study done recently that basically says that people who show this kind of fanatical obsession with other people's behaviors are in fact doing it to cover up for their own lack of morality, and it's easier to criticize somebody else's guilt than it is to examine your own. Real quick, guys, because we're almost done, what about the difference between the way you see men and the way that the progressive left sees men?
We love men.
We like real men.
Yeah. I mean, we could do without the man buns.
Right.
That's a little bit weird.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
Yeah, not really sure why they want to look like soccer moms.
But there's a huge push right now to emasculate men.
Yeah.
And it comes from this whole, you know, third wave, fourth wave feminism.
And we're not fans of that. Why do we want to emasculate? We love men.
And we love the differences between men and women, and those should be celebrated. And now the lines are getting blurry, and I don't know why we want that to be a thing.
We like men. Men.
Like you.
Like you.
Aren't you kind? You know, it's really that's really it, and I think that's why conservatives are consistently found to be just so much happier than these progressives. We don't see this as a war, and we don't see this as anything like a war or a contest. And as I was reminded from one of the ads during the break, the only race thing that we care about is NASCAR, and that's the difference between us and them. They simply cannot imagine that people could be comfortable and not be victims, because victimhood is what they sell. That's their product. That's what they sell. Ladies, it's been so much fun to have you on here. I know we're going to have you back on again real soon. Thanks so much for being with us. That's Miriam Weaver, or Macarena, and Amy Jo Clark, known as Daisy. They're Chicks on the Right. And they've got a book that's really kind of cool called Right for a Reason. And thanks so much for being with us today, guys. We'll see you real soon.
Thank you. It was great to see
Thank you so much for having us.
My absolute pleasure. It's really fun. I met those two ladies when I was in Indianapolis quite early in my career. I want to say around 2010 at a Tea Party rally, and they're just unbelievable. The energy that they show on the show, they just got it all the time. I don't know what they're using for fuel, but I want some. They're absolute warriors out there. So what do we do about all of this? Well, I think it was Mock who was really on it, and that is, you have to fight back. This idea that we're not going to descend to their level and we're not going to argue with them about things that we know to be true is just, it doesn't work. You can't absent yourself from this fight. You know, so many people say, I want nothing to do with politics, and believe it or not, I'm with you, but I don't care about politics, but politics cares about me. And there's no walking away from it. The fight is in the pop culture. The fight is taking place over water coolers. The fight's taking place on Facebook. This is where the story goes. We have two different stories, and the question is, which one is true and which one can you sell? I happen to think it's easier to sell the truth. You know, as they said, these women don't think of themselves as victims. You know why they don't think of themselves as victims? You know why they don't protest 24 hours a day about their victimhood? Do you know why? Because they're too busy being a success. That's why. They don't have the time for it. They don't have the time to go out there and whine and complain about things that happened 70 years ago or 100 years ago. They're busy with a business that's just kicking butt, and they're making a difference. So I would just say to all of you out there, you cannot walk away from the argument. There's no walking away from this fight. This fight is in the culture. It's the first time in this country's history, and I think that's why we're struggling so much. We know how to fight conventional wars rather well. We've had some experience at it, and we know the price of defending our freedom in that regard. I don't think we're prepared to spend those kind of resources, emotional and financial, to defend freedom against people who use images and stories. But I can assure you that as a student of history, I am far more worried about the progressives than I ever imagined I could be over Nazis or Japanese imperialists or German imperialists or Confederates or the British Army or any of that. Anyway, that's it for the Hot Mic Show for today. We'll be back tomorrow. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll see you right here tomorrow on NRA TV.